theadlist.com podcast. We're here with me, Ryan Mayer, and Steven. We have a great guest on for you today, Jake Greene from millennialparents.com. It's a pretty popular web series that's gone viral over the last week, and the videos are quite hilarious. So Jake, welcome. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Welcome.
It's a pleasure. So we haven't been on doing the podcast thing for maybe a couple months now, and we're glad to jump back with you as the guest, just because I'm a huge fan of what you're doing now. Why don't you give us a little background of how you got into this sphere? Sure.
Well, I think like a lot of people who whether people write a blog or people start an Instagram account or something where they're sort of chronicling and capturing their lives, I think when you start having kids, you get inspired to sort of think about new things in a way that you haven't before. It's an interesting transition, and so I've been doing work in the generational space, looking at millennials and intergenerational workplaces and writing office comedy and stuff like that for the last few years. And when I started having kids, and I've got two little boys now, one's 2.5 and one's about 6 months old, it only seemed like a natural progression that I moved from entry-level careers to entry-level families. And I've got a directing and producing partner I've worked with on a few projects, Natalie Irby, who's a very talented shooter and editor in addition to director. And she and I got excited about the idea of doing sort of very short, digestible narrative vignettes about sort of what happens to millennial parents when they have kids and go through that transition where you realize that you're not as cool as you were the day before. And it's sort of tough to take for a generation that's been raised with the idea that we're all irresponsible and pop culture obsessed and cool, and that we're sort of transitioning from this phase. For me, there were a number of incidents that happened to me where it felt like I was moving from cool older brother to creepy uncle, and you either you got to embrace that and sort of figure out a way around that so that you could be a little less creepy. But so the show is primarily between a husband and wife named Kurt and Annie who've got kids, but it's not one of those shows where you're looking at Bjorns and babies all the time. We sort of subscribe to the horror movie "Don't show the monster" adage. So it's primarily about how their lives are affected by having a new family.
That's cool. Like I said, I'm a huge fan. I want to know, like, are these things that you happened in your life, or are these just things you thought of that were kind of clever?
It's a mix. I mean, it depends on the episode. Like, some are more autobiographical than others. Sure. But the first episode on millennialparents.com, the one that sort of got people really excited last week about the issue that you have for a generation of dads that grew up listening to hip-hop and explicit lyric hip-hop in the 90s. Like, when those are the songs in your wheelhouse, and you're not supposed to sing those to your kids, but those are the ones that sort of pop into your head naturally. Like, that happened to me a lot. And so that one's pretty...
I can relate.
The individual moments, vignettes that we moved in there for Kurt are sort of specific for that character. But I was definitely, I've been in situations where I've been with one of my kids, and even songs where you start singing them because they're sweet and acoustic, will end with overt drug references or something, and all of a sudden you're having to do bad lyric changes on the fly.
Well, Jake, I've totally noticed the same thing, and especially so my oldest is 7, which is crazy. But as they get older, so somehow "Baby Got Back" comes on in my car. I mean, and so you'll encounter parents, I'm sure, that are I don't let my kid listen to anything with any sort of explicit lyrics, and other parents are on the other side of the spectrum that are like, they're going to be exposed to it soon enough anyways.
Yeah.
I was sort of in the middle, and there's songs where it's like, well, they have no idea what this means. And then all of a sudden, now he's like 7, and like, well, he might sort of be figuring out that this isn't really talking about, his anaconda is not his snake,
That's that's exactly the part of the song I was thinking about. You might understand what having a motor in the back of her Honda means.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But let me ask this question, because I've watched all the videos, and actually the one that I think just got posted today, the most recent one, which is episode 6.
Yeah. We release weekly every Tuesday.
Okay, so that one I thought was the funniest, just because it's sort of the most relevant, even now with older kids. Like, you just get into these conversations. We talk about it in a second, but what I always struggled, because when I saw Millennial Parents, I always question whether I was born in 80. I don't know if you were 79 or 80. Ryan was 80, right?
I'm 80, yep.
So it's like, do you identify as a Gen X or Millennial? And obviously, Millennial Parents are just becoming parents, where Gen Xers have been parents for a long time. But how much does that actual generational divide define your content or inform your content?
Well, I don't think it's really about a generational Gen X versus Gen Y. It's sort of millennial and there are a lot of different definitions in terms of like what the yearly cutoffs were, but those are really arbitrary. It really is referring to people that became adults. I think one of the early definitions was people who turned 21 in the 21st century. And we would all qualify for that. But does that make us different than someone born in 1977 or someone born in 1982? Not necessarily. I think the challenge is we're sort of that tail end of Gen X, the beginning of Gen Y. I always like to think of us, we're sort of the pop culture generation. Like, we're the first group that was really raised with remote controls in our hands and keyboards in our hands, and where our relationship with pop culture wasn't just an entertaining relationship, it was also an educational relationship.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think that informs a lot of the way we think, and a lot of the references that we make, how movie quotes make it into every aspect of conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's that's
I'm just laughing to myself. Yeah, I agree. I mean, movie quotes and all these things have definitely taken a huge part of our life. Like, I don't even think about when we were growing up, like you said, the remotes and computers, and literally we were the first generation to have all those things, and now we're trying to raise these kids, and where's the line? Where's the red line? What's too much and what's not enough,
Yeah, I mean, that's a question for a smarter person than I am. I'm just sort of I've been I don't know. My kids are so small. I haven't gotten into the like what's too much and what's not enough. In retrospect, obviously, if I'm writing stuff like this, like the Inappropriate Lullabies episode, it was pop culture was fairly influential in my life. But I don't know. I think it's a fun time. There are people who would. I think there's what's interesting about the relationship between the people that grew up with computers and those who adapted to computers as adults, which is really the split. That's sort of the first. It's as big a rift as those that grew up with rock and roll and those that adapted to rock and roll as adults, right? So when rock and roll came out, it was like loud and cacophonous, and there were too much happening at once, right? And that's sort of what people were saying about all this technology when it came out, is that people are multitasking, they're not focusing on any one thing, they're like not following one melody. And so part of the irony there is that the group that was the young side of the rock and roll generation is now the old side of the digital generation, and they seem to be having a lot of the same complaints as their parents had with rock and roll.
That's absolutely true.
Another thing, sort of along the same lines that you're talking about, that defines the generation, or that I think is unique about whatever the digital generation and how we're going to define it. It's not important, but is that when our parents' generation, when they were 34, which I think we're all about 34, 35 now, like everybody was grown up, And in our generation, there's 34-year-olds with kids that are not grown up at all. They're still, working at a tech startup, and they, wear flip-flops every day. And then there's people that have kids that are 10 years old and have been married for 12 years and, put on a suit and tie and go to work every day. So our generation's much more ephemeral, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. If we were doing a video podcast right now, you would see me smiling a little bit because we addressed that directly in an episode that's going to come out in a couple of months.
Okay.
The idea that one generation's 35 is not the next generation's, and I think there's just no. It gets to a point. There's no clear path, right? There's no set expectation of what a life path should be. It isn't go to college, get married, have kids, get a job, stay at that job for 20 years, get your pension, retire, move to Boca. Like that used to be a fairly standard normal, and now there's just no normal. The world is wide open for a variety of factors. College saddles you with debt. People are getting married later. We're the generation that, right as we were coming of age, Enron and WorldCom were happening, so we're totally wary of staying anywhere for 20 years. And then you also have, you've got the fact that because everybody has so much visibility and transparency with the internet, you have people who pursue one career path, and then you get worried that you're like shutting the door on all of the other aspects of your life. And it's sort of like, instead of, everyone, it's like the Diddy problem, like everyone wants to be a mogul off the bat. And so we all, we try to run 5 parallel careers. And then technology doesn't make it any easier by coming up with things that render entire industries obsolete on like a bi-decade basis.
That's true. Wow.
I think that's something that Dad lifts. There's a lot of like weightlifting and fitness component to it, and it's one of those things where maybe we like that idea because technology has no way to replace lifting up heavy things yet. Getting in shape, staying in shape, but that's true. It's I want my kids to have a good sense of direction, but if they don't, it doesn't matter. There's an article I haven't read, but it's open on my computer about the death of handwriting and what it means. What are all the other consequences of it? And it's really interesting because we're going to obviously see that occur as we go on.
Well, I'll tell you what, my favorite part of that is the generational statement. There's an article that's on my computer that I haven't read yet, and that speaks to as content creators, what we're up against and trying to put something out there that people find relevant. It's sort of like you're serving, there's no 3-course meals anymore. You're serving those like Jetson pills that have all the nutrients in one.
Right. Well, that's a great transition to talk about your series, a little more specifically. One thing that I like about it, and as I said, I've seen them all, is because they're 2 minutes, 3 minutes, very easy to consume, perfect to take a break from something or to watch on your phone. You're not committing to a half hour, 45-minute format. How'd you guys come up with that format? Is that what we're going to see going forward? And it sounds like you got a few months of programming going out. So what should we expect to see?
Well, I think Natalie and I had a lot of conversations about that. Our last project was about 12 minutes, but you just can't expect people. You have to look at yourself and say, what do I do when I watch videos? If I see a 5 in front of a YouTube video and I know it's 5 minutes or more, there's no way I'm clicking on it. And so the question is, how do you get in and out of there in a way that's sort of tasteful and feels salient and on topic, and where people get a little entertainment value out of it? And we really like sort of the 2-minute time frame, 2 to 3 minute time frame to do that. And I'm lucky in that I work with someone who is a visual artist first and sort of extremely adept at telling a narrative visually. So we try to make sure that we have some interesting, in addition to sort of just hitting jokes, trying to tell a visual story as well. But then that results in some pretty painful editing, where we always shoot much more than we end up showing on the screen, and end up having to kill those jokes that you thought were your standby jokes. But that's the difference between 2.5 and 3.5 minutes.
Wow, that's a lot to think about. As for as much editing as we've done just with audio, and I can relate to what you're saying. That's a lot of work. But I want to ask you a question, and I don't mean to interrupt or go the other way here, but
Your show, man.
hey, that's what I like to hear. How did you decide that this was what you wanted to do? Like.
Sure.
You wrote the book. I remember when you came out with your Whoa, My Boss Is Naked?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then you've progressed as a writer slash producer, director. Tell us about that a little bit.
Sure. So personally, the book came out in 2008, and I started doing shortly thereafter. Started giving speeches to different corporate groups, and also sort of realized that I loved writing. I needed to do more of it. It had always been something that I'd sort of suppressed.
Yeah.
And so I started talking to friends who lived in Los Angeles and writing and producing shorts. And I did produce some music videos. My first short series that I produced was in 2010, 11 about college football coaches, and just sort of learning about how that worked. I had my first kid in the end of 2011, and as I was thinking about that process, I've been writing a lot. There were a couple times where I'd stopped and started on a second book. I didn't want to write a book I didn't really believe in, and I just sort of had I had done some development with cable networks on both the scripted and the unscripted side, which means that I had pitched them ideas that they had bought and then killed before they made it to television, which is what the vast majority of projects in Los Angeles. That's their fate. It's sort of like, if you think about it, like Major League Baseball. There's thousands of people in the minors, and as you move up, it thins out, and then you only have a handful in the majors. That's kind of how it is. I had a couple of projects that died in Double-A, and then really was just. When I started having kids, I really felt like I was starting to find my voice a little bit. And then it just happened to be at the same time I was coming off a project that Natalie and I had worked on together, which dealt a lot with identity, millennial identity, when you have so many multiple accounts that you're dealing with, and what happens when you lose track of them, and how frantic is that, and sort of the level of desperation and insecurity that people feel. And then the next step in that journey was to sort of look at how the big life cycle event of having kids affects that. And the floodgate opened for me creatively, and I just started writing a lot. And initially I didn't know if it was going to be a book or what it was going to be, and then it just...
That's awesome.
We had some Natalie and I had some conversations. I started doing some more pointed, targeted writing toward this project, and it came together as we started to refine the material, and we had the experience of casting with some great casting agencies, and had some great crew to do some production with, and just ended up shooting this. We shot it in February. It took us a while to get through post-production, and yeah, we're really excited about it. A lot of the people who worked on the project are also new parents, so. If you listen to our theme song and a lot of the songs that we use, it's by a band called Drew Holcomb and the Neighbors. Drew and his wife Ellie have a 1.5-year-old girl. Our production designer just had her first child. Our colorist, our web guy, like everybody's got these little kids, and then we've got enough people on the project who are single. To be able to say whether or not whether a given subject is inside baseball to the point where it'll just turn off everybody who doesn't have a kid, because the last thing we want is to be that person at the dinner party who can't talk about anything except vaccinations.
So I was just saying, I'm glad you brought that up, because I remember before I had kids and Facebook came out, and I would complain about the people that had kids to my wife, just in private, just like, God, it's people. All they share is their damn kids or their damn dogs,
Yeah.
And it's like, none of us, we don't want to see that. We're single and still living well, not single, but we didn't have kids. And I remember thinking, I'll never be like that. And sure enough, I mean, I'm that guy, and I'll own it. But it's a different world. It really does change you, like you said.
Yeah, it's we deal with that directly in a couple different episodes, but it's cool. The idea of this, that if you think about what a parent's job was when we were growing up, like young, pre-internet, right? You would go to a restaurant and your parents or a party and your parents would say, all right, you guys need to be on your best behavior. And the reason was because that party was going to be the picture that was left in the minds of everyone who was there. And they would say, oh, the Schoenbergers are good kids. They're so well behaved. Right? But now it's like it's a TMZ world where, like,
oh, man.
If your third grader farts in class and some kid tweets about it, like, that bears as much weight as, like, the best behavior that they had at the wedding. It's like a constant ticker of activity and judgment.
Well, so I agree with you in a lot of ways, but I think of Facebook as like this cultivated. People complain because they want to see pictures of my kids, and I rarely post them on Facebook, but I'm like, people, you're just giving the most curated version of your family, and it's so annoying. Everybody's kid is so wonderful and so amazing on Facebook, it's like, oh, maybe there's some posting bias that you're not, oh, you didn't post the huge screaming fight you just had with your, 3-year-old over whether or not she could sleep in her underwear versus a pull-up,
So we had, we touched that a little bit. The idea of the curation to me is, it's so funny. In our third episode, which is called Roller Coaster World, which is on millennialparents.com and on YouTube right now, deals with I've run into a lot of, I see these things on Facebook where someone will post a picture, like, from the state fair, right? And it'll be them, like, having the best time near a butter sculpture, right? And they're just like YOLO, hashtag whatever. And I know that there was a lightning storm at the state fair, and, like, none of the plumbing was working, and their kid has an ear infection, right? But, like, people, it's all about their perception. And in that third episode in Roller Coaster World, we tackle the idea of, what's more important, like, just having a good time, or making people think that you had the best time by posting photos, even if you're totally lying about it.
Yeah,
go ahead, Steven.
No, that was a great episode, and the negotiation between, I want to go, and clearly the wife is only going to post those photos, and I was thinking about that episode earlier when we were chatting about just still, like, wanting to be young and go out and go to an amusement park, period. But I forgot about that whole premise about the curation aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Like, I see everybody has to like have an exclamation point time now, Like, it used to be, one of my favorite games at weddings is, like, trying to predict, and I love prop bets at weddings, where you put $1 with odds on, like, something random at a wedding, but I always love prop betting about the adjectives that the best man and the maid of honor will use in their speech, because they always want to make it seem like they'll always say truly and amazing, like, 40 million times. Like, if next time you're at a wedding, it'll be like, you guys are truly the most amazing couple I've ever encountered in my life, truly.
Oh.
And it's sort of, that's what people are doing, like, on a minute-by-minute basis on Facebook right now. It's like, most amazing sunset ever. It's like, it's back to the double rainbow, And
that's true.
The fact is, like, most of us, Stephen, like you're just saying, most of us aren't going out. Like, we don't have the energy at the end of work and, like, dealing with kids to, like, go ride a roller coaster, or even, like, go get a drink. We had, my wife and I, there was a really cool bar that opened stupid close to our house, like 5 blocks from our house in Los Angeles. And we didn't know about it for 10 months because they didn't open their doors until 8 p.m. And the only way you could get us out of our house at 8 p.m. is if our house was on fire.
That's the same for us. Oh, man.
Yeah.
So where are we at on time? I haven't even looked. I think we're on. I think we're getting close to the 30 minutes. I wanted to kind of wrap it up, but I could talk about this stuff for hours because this is literally the stuff I think about all the time. And just to talk about your last comment about the weddings, my wife's a photographer, and we just shot a wedding this last weekend. And typically we just dread the speeches, and we shot this one wedding that every single person, not just the maid of honor and the best man, every single person in the wedding party, including the fathers, had to give a speech, and it was literally a 2-hour-long event. And
Jake, I think Jake really misses calling going down video and production. Let's build an app that is made just to place prop bets at weddings for speeches. I think.
That's an idea.
We had my one of the highlights of my prop betting life. The other thing that and this is, Dadless listeners, you're getting a hot inside tip that could be very profitable. I'm like those East Coast guys on Sunday morning sports talk radio who advertise their betting sites. This one's the winner, but the best man and the maid of honor, one of them will always apologize for something. And you can get good odds on this if people haven't been thinking about it. But one of them, whether it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not very good at giving speeches, or I'm sorry that I'm crying, or I'm sorry if I'm a little inappropriate, but I have to tell you about our bachelor party. Like, they'll always apologize. And I was at a buddy's wedding where we had a lot of they'd had a long cocktail hour, and the bets were flowing freely and cheaply. We're talking like 14 to 3 odds on a quarter type thing. But I had a lot riding on the maid of honor apologizing, and she tripped over the microphone cord on the way up to get the mic, picked up the mic, and immediately apologized for tripping, and our table went bananas. And in retrospect, like, there was a moment of awkwardness right after it where we realized we just applauded her poor fall, but it was, that didn't stop me from collecting like $2.30 and the adoration of the rest of the table.
That's pretty funny. So
this is stuff we do when we become parents. This is because we have no life. We're reduced to taking bets in daily life. But it's fun, and I love it. So
it was, what's funny is that I think about the shows that I used. The most recent episode 6 of Millennial Parents is about when Kurt and Annie encounter some hipster friends who want to appear smart by talking all about like some event called the embargo that they've learned about in the news. And I think about like the shows that I used to watch before I had kids, like when you could stay up late night and like get lost in a couple documentaries on Netflix with no repercussions because you didn't have like a human alarm clock at 5:45 on Sunday. And then I think about like the stuff that I watch now at the end of the day, like when I'm just zonked and I have no mental capacity, right? Like I don't even have, like I just can't take in anything of substance. And I watch, I'll get stuck on one of those stupid, like, how much does it cost reality shows, like Storage Wars or something like that.
Because you can't find the remote. The kid hid it or threw it in the garbage or something.
Right, and the thing is, if you're 20 seconds into that show, you're going to stick around to find out how much it costs,
Right.
It's so stupid. And they're so fake, It's like...
Right.
There's
no longer even a pretense in reality TV that it's reality.
It's like me and Bubba was looking in that room, and I had a special feeling that, sure enough, when we shined a flashlight, beyond that broken armoire, we saw a box full of vintage Star Wars toys and a military-issued hovercraft. It's like, it's like there's no way that happened, but I'm going to wait to see how much you supposedly get for the hovercraft.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
So,
yeah, that's all real. Real.
So I mean, so with that in mind, I mean, does that inform how you're going forward with Millennial Parents? Is there some greater strategy to become a reality TV show, or there was
No.
this reality TV show Dads on TV that was.
Oh yeah, dude.
Well, no, you mean a scripted show. There was a narrative show, a scripted show called Dads.
Oh, there was
a
another
reality show too.
There's another reality show where it was like 3 or 4 different dads. One was like a single dad, one was older dad, one was a divorced dad, or whatever. It was stupid.
Well, reality TV is all about individual characters. It doesn't really matter what they do if it's an individual person. So what I think what people lose from time to time is they're like, they want to talk about a given subject, but they don't want to put an interesting spin on it. It's like, I want to talk about food. I'll list off some vitamins. It's like, no, they want to watch the Angry British Chef,
right,
or the train wreck, the train wreck over the top caricature, show like Man vs. Food or something. It's much more about how we interact with the subject matter than it is about the nuts and bolts of the subject itself, I think.
So not that was an answer to my question. I mean, you're just going to keep. Millennial Parents is going to keep on going with the current
format. Yeah, basically,
I think it's great.
We've stockpiled a number of episodes. People seem to be really excited about it, and so we'll be releasing one every week into the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the embargo episode. Some episodes you watch and you're like, okay, that's not really me. I get it. It's funny as a parent. The embargo one was why. I don't know why. I mean, I feel like I'm a pretty informed parent, but I just can picture myself sitting there and talking like of course I'm aware about the situation going on in, East Africa. It's terrible. I'm sure it's terrible.
Right, and on the, part of you is saying that, and your eyes keep drifting back to the World's Strongest Man reruns, on
Yes.
on ESPN3.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Those episodes are starring Ryan Mayer, the World's Strongest Man.
Well, I'm pretty pissed. I mean, I know you guys are into fitness, but I'm pretty pissed that the World's Strongest Man was supplanted by all the CrossFit stuff. Because they don't have something to compete with the Atlas stones yet in CrossFit.
No,
yeah,
they
we try not to go down the CrossFit rabbit hole.
What?
Well, what did you say, Ryan?
They use these big rubber balls instead.
Oh yeah, I said we try not to go down the CrossFit rabbit hole because there's no coming back.
I wish I could take credit for this.
I'm in a good place now.
I wish I could take credit for a buddy. A buddy was telling me, he's like, CrossFit, it's kind of like the opposite of Fight Club, because the first rule of Fight Club is you never talk about Fight Club.
So I CrossFit, but
strongman is just.
It's also true of vegans and marathoners and triathletes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Strongman is just CrossFit for adults.
Now, Ryan, are you competing?
Yeah, I did.
I don't even know if Ryan's talking to us.
A couple of weeks back.
Oh, you guys are talking. I'm hearing both of you at the same time. Are you pulling the truck?
No, they did have a truck pulling event that was just for kind of show. You didn't really get points from it. I decided not to do it because it's hard to do some of these things when you have kids. If I screw up my knee or something, the risk is bigger than the reward. So I kind of just do the things I was training for and leave it at that.
Got it.
So, but yes, I did the Atlas stones. I did the yoke carry.
Awesome.
Frame hold, tire deadlift, things like that.
And Steven, you're swimming the channel, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, I think we've now moved far enough away from the central topic that maybe we should wrap it up and at least for the podcast portion, let our listeners go. But I'm happy to. I hear about Ryan's stuff all the time, Jake, and I haven't talked to you in maybe a decade. So,
where can we, Jake? Why don't you tell the listeners where we can see your stuff and anything else you'd like to put out there, just so you can.
Well, I think the easiest thing for us, if you want to watch them all, they're all very, very short. If you go to youtube.com/millennialparents, and millennial has 2 N's in it, you can subscribe to the channel and you'll get updated every Tuesday when we have a new video coming out. And if you see anything that you like, please share it and pass it around.
If you guys would have had spelled it with 1 N, you would have saved me so much time.
Well, actually, tell you what, man. We actually now have www.millennialparents.com both ways.
Yeah.
And I'll link you to the site.
I'm usually a fairly decent speller, but for some reason, millennial, every time I type it, I do it wrong.
Well, USA Today also did it wrong. So it was.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Who did it wrong?
What?
Who'd you say did it wrong as well?
USA Today.
Oh.
So it was. Luckily, they had the link posted correctly, and we were so grateful to have the exposure that, we're not going to write in with spell check complaints, considering that I work in the space and I still have to look at it to make sure I'm spelling it correctly.
Yeah. Well, I think
that's great, man.
The episodes are well worth everybody's time. They're hilarious, and if you don't find them funny, it's 2 minutes. So who cares?
Yeah,
but
you're a hipster.
So far,
they're
all very good.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much for talking about it and participating. And here's to hoping you guys come off hiatus and jump back in to Dad List on the regular.
Well, thanks, man. That's what the plan is.
By the way, did you hear me say on the regular as though that's anywhere near cool?
I did, and it didn't even faze me.
It sounds like English isn't my first language there. It's like, I hope you make super premium Max Party at Deadlift,
We take any kind of compliment we can get.
Well, I see a lot of success. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll let you guys go. Thanks again for being on, Jake. Steven, if you guys want to stay on and talk, that would be cool. I got to go. It's my wife's birthday actually today, so we're gonna go eat some cake.
Awesome.
Happy birthday.
Well, thank you guys so much. I got to run away to a couple of meetings, but I really appreciate the conversation, and it's nice catching up with you guys personally because I haven't talked to you in a while.
Yeah, for sure. And good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck with the project.
All right, guys.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jake.
Bye.
Thanks, Ryan. Bye.